My light is strong, my empowerment, my self-confidence, my emotional intelligence. I'm reading what I can do best and then letting the rest come to me, right? And I think that's a big message right now that I would love for them to grab hold of and understand that they have it every single day. They can be that beacon. And something my mother instilled in me really early was people are watching, people are looking, they're wanting that, but be the beacon and then let them light their path, let them take it from there.
In the coaching and consulting world, everyone talks about success, but few talk about what it really takes to get there. I'm Kevan Hollie, and this is Coaches Unplugged, where we pull back the curtain and have honest conversations with the people shaping the industry. In each episode, you'll hear how top coaches and consultants built their businesses, faced their challenges, and continue to grow, both in impact and in mindset. No fluff, no pretense, just real stories, real lessons, and real talk about what it takes to build something that lasts. Today, we have an executive leadership coach with over 25 years of experience helping people lead with confidence and purpose. She began her career coaching women's collegiate volleyball and softball, where she discovered her passion for teamwork and empowerment. Today, she brings that same energy to her work with business and nonprofit leaders across the country. She is on the consultation team at Idaho Partners for Good, an organization that specifically helps nonprofit leaders. She's also the author of You Have What It Takes, Using the Skills You Have to Excel in Leadership. Please help me welcome Kelly Gibbons.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here.
Great to have you, Kelly. Thanks again for joining us. So just to kind of get right into it for our listeners are excited to hear about your background and your story. Can you share a little bit about your role, where you are with the company you were with, and how it fits into the bigger picture?
Yeah, so the landscape right now for nonprofits particularly is kind of scary, to be honest, and it's a little tentative. So we at the Idaho Partners for Good, we bring in a lot of consultants with varied backgrounds. So my role is essentially leadership development, leadership empowerment, and those are the things and the skills that we can bring to the table right now. And what we do, our model is a little unique in that we bring a team of our consultants in, and then it's kind of a menu for those that are receiving the services. They can pick and choose, and they can get that rounded out for those areas in their nonprofit that they can't afford or otherwise are looking to fill. So it's a unique perspective. I really enjoy my role because I can pull from all of the things and the experience that I have over the years of athletic coaching, as well as people development within nonprofit, and then just the parenting skills. I tie that in and talk about all three of those things in my book and how they're very similar in dealing with those things that you're a little uncertain about. We might not have that handbook, and so we need to create our own handbook based on our strengths and the things that we do well.
Great. That's very interesting that you put it that way. Obviously, being with so much experience, over 25 years, right? That's a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge and expertise that you bring to the table. So I'm sure you're quite busy. What does a typical day look like for you right now?
Yeah. It's all about meeting people where they are. And that's something that you talk about those 25 years. Well, I can tell you that those first 10 to 15 was a lot of questioning, a lot of learning, a lot of what about this and have you thought about that? The last 10, I can say that I've really focused in on my why. And that's something, again, that I try to implore people to say, what is that? Where do I want to go and why? What's my direction? So the typical day for me is not typical. I'm usually encountering folks that have these different situations. Some are difficult, some are seemingly difficult, but we just need to back down and put them in perspective. So I think, reaching out, speaking with those nonprofits that are finding the gaps, and ways that we can fill them, but then also helping them understand the why, understand where they want to show up at this table that they feel like they're not prepared to be. And then we delve back into that why. Why do you feel that way? What's missing? And maybe it isn't all that much that missing. It's just that empowering what I have and bringing that to the table front and center.
Very interesting. Kelly, what parallels do you see? Because obviously you started your coaching career in sports
Yes.
with women's volleyball and softball. I'm just curious, what parallels do you see now as an executive coach? What parallels do you see in comparison to back when you were coaching women's sports?
Yeah, there are several, and they get a little mixed at times for sure. But when I started coaching at the college level, I was only 24, so I was coaching 18 to 22-year-old women, and that was the challenge that I found. But mostly, I found that confidence, that showing up with the tools that I have right now and doing that the best I can do. Those are the parallels that I see when I start coaching young executives or those in new leadership roles. It's that questioning and that doubt. And, it's like, what do you have? What can you draw from? Because if I go in and try to pretend or act as if, fake it till you make it, which is something that I just don't like that comment, right? But the reality says I have skills, and what I need to know is what I do best, bring that to the fore, act on that, take accountability for that, and then build the rest, whether it's with people, resources, time, all those talents. Maybe I need to go get some more education from someone else, and so I found that with my players, we needed to hone in on what are those things that they do well, make sure they're doing them consistently. They show up every day doing that. And then I find that with my leaders too. They're questioning. There's a lot of questioning, whether it's within themselves, sometimes it's their environment that they're in. Ask the questions, come forward, the why am I doing this, but also what can I do to increase the things that I do well, and then start building around that with the other resources.
Definitely, definitely. And, it's pretty remarkable because, just when you talk about the recipes for success, right? For whether you're coaching athletics or you're coaching, business executives, it's all the same, right? You talk about, you mentioned consistency and you mentioned, mindset and things like that. Those translate, across, every industry that you want to, anything that you want to be successful in, it takes those things, right? So,
It does.
I'm sure that was a very unique transition for you. Was there a key turning point or a breakthrough moment for you, Kelly, in your career that you would say changed everything in your coaching career that you could point to?
I don't think everything, but I do think the turning point is when I started to realize as a coach that the transition from player to coach was more involved than I gave it credit for. Granted, I was very young, but at the same time, I was assuming and taking in the skills and the talents that I brought as a player, which were at a fairly high level, right? And I'm bringing them in to say, this is what we want, this is what we're achieving, this is what we're looking to set as goals, right? Is to play at that level. When the reality is that's that decision point of, no, that's what I brought to the table. That's what, as a player. Now, as a coach, I have to make that transition. And part of that transition is saying, meeting them where they are. I had these expectations, and I would recruit the players, bring them in, have expectations, and they didn't quite match up initially in my career. So when I figured that out, when it was becoming a time where we're bringing them in for their skills and what they add, then our program, the goal of me as a coach and our program and all the support is to develop them, and not only on the volleyball court, but in life. That was one of the things, building those life skills. So I think the turning point really was when I recognized that fully, to say, my strengths now as a coach, yeah, there's bases for that based on as a player, the skills that I brought in, but the knowledge of the game from that coaching perspective, I'm still learning.
Definitely. Definitely. There was an old saying that those who can't do teach, but it's very unique because, in our industry, we teach because we can also do, so,
Exactly.
it's definitely a very unique difference there.
Yeah.
As far as the industry, right? The industry it's ever changing. I mean, especially with, there's the economy, there's technology, there's a lot of things that are beyond our control, but what challenges are you noticing in the industry right now amongst coaches and consultants?
Kevin, I think it's really keeping that human element front and center, keeping us real, keeping that vulnerability to say, I do a lot of teaching. I teach out at our local prison for the men's pre-release program so when they're getting ready to go before the parole board, getting out and talking about the changes that they've manifested and, now they're doing things differently. And I think bringing that human element and saying, yeah, the vulnerability piece is still there. I don't know everything, but what I do know is that I need to keep asking questions and that I need to keep learning because every second with the technology, like the things you just mentioned, things are changing at this rapid pace. And if I am inauthentically showing up trying to keep up with that or keep ahead of that, that is very challenging, right? Because I lose myself sometimes in the goal of being the best or being the first or, having some rank, right? And I just need to show up. I need to be present. I need to listen, allow that vulnerability to say, I'm learning and I want this to be better, but with humans by my side. And that's what we do at the Idaho Partners for Good is we've got humans shoulder to shoulder who are filling in the gaps and taking that up. And I do think that landscape of change, what's the constant? And the constant has to be how I show up. I'm there, I'm present, and I'm doing the best I can do and understanding that about everyone. And imagine I talk about this almost every day is imagine if everyone we're assuming that everyone's doing the best they can do and everyone is doing the best they can do, we're going to be unstoppable.
Exactly, exactly. You can only do what you can do, right? You can only do the best that you can do. So that's a very, very valid point. What would you say right now, as far as in your own personal coaching business and career, what's something that you can point to that's working? It's a two-part question. What's working really well for you right now? And what has been the most frustrating?
What's working well is empowerment and helping all of my constituents and all of my coachees to understand that the talent that I have, I don't want to beat this up, but I've got to build on that. That's so important to not let that slip and say, yeah, I can do that in my sleep, right? I don't have to work at that. And really, the flip side of that is true. So I think that's where I'm seeing the most growth. That's where I'm having the most success is having them, yes, have that, yes, and that vulnerability showing up and saying, yes, I still can be vulnerable, but show you the things that I have in front of me. The most frustrating piece of that though is just the reverse of that to where we're trying to compete in a market or in a workplace or on the team or trying to compete in stepping outside of the confines of the prison. I'm trying to figure out my way, and what I listen to are what other people have been through. And that's the most frustrating because I can't. It's my own unique experience. Yeah, I can learn, but really they say that experience creates wisdom, and it's really the evaluation of experience that creates wisdom. That's something that Adam Grant has said many times in things that he's come forward with. And I really believe that, yeah, I've got experience, but I need to evaluate my experience because if I start competing and comparing, then that's where that frustration starts to really take hold. So hopefully I answered your question.
Definitely. What would you say has been? I know that we can't quantify how many things you've learned in your illustrious career, but what would you say has been one of the biggest lessons you've learned? that have shaped your experiences?
It was pretty early in my career, and that's really the big prompt for writing the book was to say, when I was a young coach, I was looking to other folks. I couldn't go to enough conferences. I couldn't go to, read enough books, or how do you handle this, or what do you do in this defensive situation, or how do you train, and just, all of these things. I was just a sponge, right? I want to know more. But what I started to find out was that I was adopting what other coaches were doing and their idea of success and their example of success. Oh, well, this coach is doing that, so I'm going to do that and I will have success, right? I mean, that's what happens. And of course that doesn't happen, but what I learned in that is that I can't really put a template over my coaching. I can't put a template over team to team, year to year. It's all unique, and all the players and all the circumstances, the environment, the, IT, all of the tech, all of the things that are changing, they have to be taken into account. And I think those successful coaches, those successful coachees are the ones that are able to adapt to that and say, again, going back to my strengths, this is what I do best, and I'm going to build on that because, and so I comment off to my coachees is don't let people put a template over you because it's just not, it's very frustrating. We're banging the sides too often of that.
And it's interesting, Kelly, because again, I know I keep pointing to your career span. If you go back to the beginning, right? We're almost into the turn of the century, and we've seen so many different changes happen over that stretch. Just in the world. You mentioned earlier about how there has to be that constant of the human element. Regardless of the rise of the internet during that time frame,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
the rise of social media,
Mm-hmm.
the rise of AI, and we're starting to see that unfold now even more. How have you been able to remain successful and stay on the cutting edge throughout all of the changes that have happened over the last however many years?
Yeah, yeah, it's very challenging, because when I first started coaching, of course, there was no instant messaging. So I didn't know if people were receiving the information or if they were remembering or what they were setting up as their standard to achieve their goals. And so we had a lot of check-in times. We had a lot of what I called chalk talks. Okay, so that's dating me, right? We'd have the chalk and the chalkboard, but I kind of hung on to that term as time went on. But what are you doing? What are you feeling? Where does this hit? Because that intuitively we know as coaches that what I say hits everyone differently. Right. And so learning early in my career that just because I say something to the collective, it's going to hit. So there's always that check in. Where does this hit with you? How does this resonate with you? What are you going to do about it? And who are you going to help, along the way? And who are you going to rely on for help along the way? So that human, like you said, the human element absolutely cannot be overlooked. I have to check in. I have to take the pulse. I need to know where that message is landing. I'm the master of my intent on that message, but there's those that are receiving it that are masters of that interpretation. And if we're not hitting on the same note, then there's going to be miscommunication. So we have to figure that out. As time went on with instant messaging, social media has been an entirely new hurdle, right? In my opinion, something to overcome, but also to utilize to your benefit. But it does reduce the human element. And so that's just an often reminder and communication through email. I feel like there's so many things, and I told my kids this growing up, so many things that you might say in an email or a text message that if you're looking face to face with someone, you would probably never say that. And that's the kind of check-in. Would I say this to their face? Would I say this in, how is it coming across? So that human element, we can't overlook that. And I know it sounds sometimes kind of trite. It's like, yes, that's a kind of a given, but the reality of it is that communication skill is top of line and top of mind. And I need to remember that as I'm dealing with people that, everyone is unique and brings those unique sets of questions, trials, the overcome. It changes the conversation. And then there's an exhale. And then there's a moment of, okay, let's back up a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great, great. Awesome, awesome. Kelly, with that, I guess with that in mind, with, on the same talking point that we're on right now, miscommunication and things like that. What are some of the misconceptions that you'd say people have about this industry as a whole right now?
Yeah, I think it goes along with a lot of the things in our society, Kevin. I think, even from our teachers in our classroom, sometimes the parents expect that the teachers are going to create that environment that helps them learn, but does the learning for them. Right. And I think that's kind of when I was doing some life coaching at one point in my career, they, yes, come coach me and make my life better, or come teach me and I'm going to do things better just because of the relationship, or just because I have employed or paid for the service, kind of thing. And it just, of course, there's that I have to take ownership and I have to take accountability piece of that. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge in that regard is I can't do this for you. You have to take up the reins at some point, but what I'm going to do is meet you where that point is and give you the tools, help you understand that you have what it takes, and then be in your corner and then be the one behind you. I've got your back kind of a mentality, rather than I'm taking the reins and I'm going to lead you. So the term even, leadership, I mean, it's like, yes, but I want to walk shoulder to shoulder because we have to help each other get there.
Definitely. And that's a valid point is that, sometimes people may think that they don't have to do anything, right? That they just go along for the ride. But, I heard one person put it this way is that you have to be a participant in your own rescue. You know what I mean? So you
Totally.
have to do your part. And as coaches, coaches aren't meant to, fix the problem for you, but more so help point to what the problem is and help you overcome it yourself. So
Right.
that's very, 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 very true. Kelly, as far as what's next, right? I mean, we talked a lot about what's been right over the last several years. What is next for Kelly Gibbons, and where do you want to be 6 to 12 months from now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm doing a lot of speaking in our community right now through our Chamber of Commerce, and I'm involved in a women in leadership group, and we're doing a fireside chat coming up in this month, and to where we can get down to those brass tasks. Right, where I want to know this, there's specific questions that I know are out there. And if I come into an environment where I'm assuming that I know what they want to hear, then we're already off on the wrong foot, right? So I think for me, I want to be able to answer the questions, answer the concerns from an empowerment standpoint. And that's a message that I feel really strongly about. I can do this, I can help, I can empower you to some extent, but the ultimate goal is for you to understand why you're doing it, take up the consequences along with that, the application, and along with the goals that I succeed in, and say, this whole thing, this is what I want. And it doesn't come by taking shortcuts. It doesn't come by saying, okay, Kelly, take my hand and let's go. It takes time. Some are faster than others, right? But it also takes that opportunity to look in the mirror and be truthful, be accountable, and know that wherever I go, I want to show up authentically. I want to show up the way that I know I am most capable, but most strong, and then I can help. And if I'm not, it's just like you said about rescue. I have to, if I'm not participating in my own, and not, I can't go out and help. But the flip side of that is I can't rescue someone that isn't ready or hasn't taken that accountability piece to say, yeah, I'm ready. So I want to speak more to my book. I want to talk about, it's a very uncomplicated read. It's a book that you can pick up and just, I have book angels that talk to me. So I open a page and that's what I need to read at that moment. And I believe that that's this type of book where if you're ready for it and you've opened up that door already, I think there's messages in there. And in this community right now, particularly with our women, our younger women in leadership, that's a place that I want to try to make a statement for them to empower them and say, yeah, you've got this. Go for it.
Definitely, definitely. And if you don't mind sharing, Kelly, for our listeners, where can your book be purchased?
Right now, it is on It's on Amazon, and it's made it to their bestseller list, which was exciting. Locally,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. It was quite the moment. But yeah, we can get it on Amazon as well as locally. Sometimes we'll sponsor that when I do my talks, but right now it's available on Amazon.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And if you just want to share the title one more time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you have what it takes, and I firmly believe that. We talk about leadership, but every instance that I talk in, it can be applied in different areas. Not necessarily leading, but just taking care of yourself, leading yourself. So, yeah,
Every
thanks,
area of
Kevin.
life. That's amazing. It's amazing. And congrats again on the bestseller list. I know
Thank you.
that's not an easy accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that very much. It's been a journey and one that I have enjoyed very, very much. This book has been being written in my head for the last 20 years. My only regret is that both of my parents passed from the time that I started the process to when it was published. But the book is definitely dedicated to them. So
I'm sure they're both looking down very proud.
thank you. I have that
Definitely.
confidence. Yeah.
And Kelly, so you mentioned one of the goals for your business is to empower and impact more people, so to speak. If you had a magic wand to fix just one thing in your business that is maybe slowing you down or holding you back, what would that one thing be?
That's a really interesting question. I think it would be just a function of time right now. Honestly, I feel like there's so many different ways that I can be successful. And my idea of success is empowering someone else, watching them do the things that I know they're capable of doing and then surpass those. It's just like my parenting skills, trying to let them do do you. Show up what you need to do, catch them being good, all of those things when you're parenting. It's like you want to reward the things that are positively happening. And I think the follow through is sometimes the hard part for me because I will make a talk or have these sessions or interact and do some coaching involvement. And then it's like letting your children move out of the house. They're out on their own and I still want to be able to help, but they're doing it themselves. So sometimes I wish the follow up or the follow through could be just a little bit more in depth. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. And it's interesting that you say that. So when you say follow through, you're referring to basically from the time that I guess come in contact with someone who needs what you have to offer, the process of taking them through the process to becoming
Yes.
a full client, and so to speak.
Yeah.
Is that
Well, and
correct?
when I was coaching, the athletes as well, because I had them 18 to 2-ish, right? And then they're gone. They graduate or they move on and if connecting, that's one way that social media has been a very positive thing in my life, has allowed me to reconnect with some of the players from early on in my career, seeing what they've done, hearing them recount stories or things that we talked about or things maybe that I instilled and helped instill in them as work ethic or stick to itiveness or goal setting or anything like that. So it's really rewarding to see the fruits of that, what they've done with the information or the impetus or just that little nudge. It's very rewarding. And that's why part of what I do this for is to see those successes for them. I don't need to be in the room, but it's so nice to be able to hear about them and see that it comes to fruition for them. So the follow up when I'm locally and coaching and leading those leaders, coming back and having conversations about where we are now versus where we were when the coaching began. Those things are tough to follow up on. We usually pay at the onset, right? And then it's just a matter of reaching back out, checking in, seeing where they are. So I don't know, that makes sense, but
Definitely. No, it makes perfect sense. And it's definitely you're not alone. There's definitely a widespread sentiment that's very
yeah.
similar to what you stated. So very, very interesting conversation. As
Yeah.
far as, just to kind of, I guess, bring things together for you, just for our listeners, for the sake of time, what advice, right? What if you had maybe one or two pieces of advice for maybe it's a new coach who's just starting their career, or maybe it's a seasoned existing coach who's been doing this for some time, but they're going through maybe a period of challenges that they're trying to overcome to get to the next level. What would you tell them?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and depending on the day, it seems to be maybe there's a different answer for that. But I think underlying is something. I'm a big Brene Brown fan, and one of the things that she talked about is being a beacon, but you don't have to light the path. So, and that speaks volumes to me. It's like I want to be that beacon. I'm trying to help my young leaders understand that because they're authentic, because they show up and there's no doubt that they are being real, that's the beacon, right? That's what I look to. But when it comes to those that I'm leading, I can't, they have to lead their own path, right? They light their own path. And if I try to light their path for them, I'm not always hitting the right things. I might be hitting those things that were important to me in my career or my life or my current situation. And so I want them to be able to have that empowerment to say, I can light this where I need it. And I know I need more light over here. I'm okay on this step, but right now I need to shine a little bit over here. But through that entire thing, my light is strong, my empowerment, my self confidence, my emotional intelligence. I'm reading what I can do best and then letting the rest come to me, right? And I think that's a big message right now that I would love for them to grab hold of and understand that they have it every single day. They can be that beacon. And something my mother instilled in me really early was people are watching, people are looking, they're wanting that, but be the beacon and then let them light their path, let them take it from there.
That's awesome. Again, like we mentioned earlier, it's you're pointing them to their own reflection and
Perfect. Yeah.
showing them
Yeah.
themselves. Basically, that's awesome. That's awesome. Where can our listeners connect with you and keep up with your latest insights?
Yeah. So we have
You have
a
the book, of
website.
course,
My book.
Amazon.com.
Yeah, that would be
You have your
great.
book. Yeah.
Yes, I also have a direct email. My business of my own. So part of Idaho Partners for Good is that we each of the consultants have their own individual business, and we come together to help the community. And my business is Soul Intention, so UL Intention. And I do have an email, which is just Kelly at soulintention.solutions. So it's one intention, multiple solutions. So, yeah.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm sure our listeners are going to love this episode and get tremendous value from it. Thank you for taking the time
Yeah.
to be so open and transparent in your responses. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. It really has been a pleasure, and I would love to have these conversations every time, every day, just because I do feel like there's something that hits. Everybody can grab something out of this. So thanks for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. And thank you all for listening and for being part of a conversation that's redefining what it means to grow, lead, and create impact. If today's episode resonated, share it, follow along, and keep the energy moving forward. Because the future of coaching and consulting isn't written by chance, it's written by those willing to evolve. I'm Kevan Hollie, and until next time, keep building something extraordinary.